Hello, guys. We are with a collab, my first big YouTuber collab. Well, maybe first YouTube collab ever with
Beasty Chicky,
the Beasty Chicky. Right, go subscribe to him. He does Roblox content. He's cool. He's chill. You know. You're a dragon.
What's the
What kind of dragon
title?
are you?
A Brazilian dragon.
Cool. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're going to go over the animated history of Brazil. We're gonna react to it, but we're gonna give commentary because I don't want to just like talk about it with something that I'm not 100% like studied in. Like, I don't know everything about Brazil. I do know like a basic amount. I do know the history of it was Portugal kind of found it. It wasn't intentionally supposed to be like that. They just accidentally found it. It became something that they used, and Portugal became a very, very big source for some of their wealth over time. They kind of would put a lot of investment. They would build a lot of like schools and lots of big infrastructure, buildings, all that stuff. They would essentially invest in the country for a very long time. It does like do this where Brazil will keep on rising. Now, the problem with Brazil was definitely its forests, right?
Look, this is where they've been starting to mark the area they will clear. This was in May, and a month later in June, all the trees you see in the pink area have been removed. That's equivalent to 750 Maracana football stadiums.
Over time, because even...
and don't forget about, I don't know if it was last year, but here's the thing. So, and in the elections on Brazil's country, it was up against Lula Bolsonaro, and Lula was the winner. But then here goes the problem. The fans of Bolsonaro started to be pretty mad at the elections, so they went all around to Brazil and started chaos. For example, my city I live in, there's a bridge where I go to my city and to another.
Are you comfortable with saying what city you're in?
Yeah, and the Bolsonaristas, they blocked the bridge, so I wasn't able to pass. So me and my family lived in a hotel. But that's not all. There's lots of bad things happen in Brazil from Bolsonaristas. But thankfully, the police actually brought all of them to jail, I think. And that's what happened. It's pretty bad. Brazil did go to a lot of suffering, especially from Portugal. But everyone gets the difference. Am I right?
Yeah. Hey, Portugal today's a pretty cool country to go to, right? Like, they definitely changed since the last time.
Well, yeah, we do. The difference to our languages, well, I don't see if they really have a difference, but I guess their language is pretty time the same. And also, in the World War II, we have lots of allies. I don't know how many, but I think they were. But I know that they were allies from Argentina, a pretty cool country.
Yeah. Brazil, at one point they were called the Empire of Brazil. Fun fact. So, around, I believe, early 19th century, around to the end of when it became more of a republic, so this is kind of somewhere around 18th, 19th century, I believe there was an empire, Brazil, and right before it became the Republic of Brazil, where I think that's when they officially banned slavery, I believe so. I know slavery was banned in 1889 in Brazil, kind of the latest out of any country in the Western Hemisphere.
One more thing to tell you that about slavery, Brazil did suffer a lot from.
Yeah, 40% of the population was slaves, correct? Compared to the 5% in America.
It was horrible. It was very horrible.
Yeah.
So anyway, should we start this video so we can react?
Yeah, let's start. Let's just watch. I can't do full in.
Genoese sailor Christopher Columbus returned to Spain with news of undiscovered islands, later recognized to be the New World. 5 years later, Portuguese sailor Vasco da Gama successfully rounded the Cape of Good Hope and found a southern route to India. The age of exploration had begun. The two rival kingdoms met together and drew two lines on the globe dividing the world into two spheres, with monopolies granted to a
That is
Portuguese
true.
half and a Spanish half.
Let me give a quick commentary on this. So they would divide in these two halves. One, as you can see, there's the eastern side of it, right, where that was going to be given to Portugal, decided by the Pope, where this side right here was to Portugal, and the rest was supposed to be given to Spain.
Yes.
But
Also, Brazil is part of South America, so I guess it
Yeah.
was divided.
they gained a lot more land. You know, Brazil became a very massive
Yeah.
country.
Yeah, Brazil did have a lot of land. It was ranked to be the 5th biggest country in the
Yeah.
globe.
It's right behind
Also,
United States,
also
Canada, Russia, and China.
Yeah, also holds one of the biggest forests in the world, which is the Amazons. But the Amazon were cut it so many times. It did grew a bit smaller, but I guess it's still one of the biggest.
Oh, and by the way,
Anyway.
remember this. I know this is in the way, but you see the big blue line right here? That is the Amazon River. The Amazon River is so rich and powerful. People don't realize it,
Yep.
but it's not like just jungle. The air, the land, the ocean there, like it's a very large water supply, and the rainforest is so massive that it contributes to 9% of the entire world's oxygen supply. Brazil has a very, very good, like, large amount of luxury and resources. If they were to chop
Yeah.
down the entire forest, they could probably, they would probably have massive destruction, and at the same time probably get like maybe top 5 richest countries. The
Well,
problem,
I guess you can say that. It's just
yeah,
a little fun fact: Brazil is one of the biggest, actually the very first best country to hold the Comunizar water, because the water, yeah, it's super big. So I guess you could say that, because Brazil is over a lot of water.
yeah. Like the Amazon's the second longest river in the entire world. The problem with the companies and the government here is definitely the corruption problems that have been going on. Even throughout its past and its history, you can link back its history to how it is today. The thing with Brazil is that
Brazil did had a lot of corruption.
yeah, a lot of the corruption
Anyways, let's
problems.
continue.
Brazil had that unlike America. Here's how America does it. America, where the companies that chop down the trees, they replant more trees than they chop down, so they're able to get infinite supply. You know, like when you play that Minecraft game, what's it called again? Like Skyblock?
Are you talking about trees? Are you talking about team trees?
No, like you have limited resources, right? And what happens is you must always replace the trees. Otherwise, if you chop down all the trees, you don't get any more resources, and you therefore lose the game. So you always have to replenish your resources. That's what American companies do.
80 to 90% of newly planted trees are planted by logging and paper companies. To quote from one of their websites, how would it be in their best interest to destroy forests with no intention of replacing the trees that are used to make paper? Sustainability of harvestable areas is crucial to the long-term survival of any paper company, and that means that sustainable, managed forests are crucial to their business model. The harvested areas for paper companies are also known as managed forests. Essentially, detailed models are built that allow trees to be harvested sustainably. For each tree that's cut down, several are planted or naturally regrown in its place at a rate that keeps the environment stable. According to the U.S. Forest Service, over 4 million trees are planted in the United States every day, with nearly 2 million planted by the paper and wood products industry.
In Brazil, they're not doing that. They're being very stupid by not replacing enough. Brazil has that problem where the government lets these companies get away with being lazy, which I'm a big fan of, capitalism. However, I do admit when there's some bad to it. Like one, I think Brazil it does a lot of crony capitalism where it's gonna try and do things like tariffs sometimes. You know what tariffs are?
Yes.
Like it's gonna make it harder for other countries to get into the market, so therefore all these companies get lazy and then they kind of just do whatever the government says to keep their power. These countries need to have the same like ability as all the others, so like there's competition and they're pressured to do better. Also, I think there should be some level of control because the Amazon's very, very important. There's two sides to it. One, if you don't chop down the trees, unfortunately, Brazil will get worse. Massive poverty, you're all gonna like starve. However, if you chop down too many trees all at once, you're gonna starve anyway. You know what I mean? So I think the solution is to find a moderate balance. Replace more trees than you chop down, and then by the time
Brazil
40,
did went through a lot of things.
yeah, by
They
the time,
went-
yeah, they were supposed to do that 60, 80 years ago, but they didn't. But back to the historical context, back to the historical. Brazil had a very massive slavery problem because Portugal was kind of the worst out of the bunch. Even for the time.
In the 16th century, Portugal did like control Brazil, I guess.
Yeah, remember.
Portugal and Brazil were not friends in the 16th century. But I guess if you only look here, I guess Brazil and Portugal are kind of nice to each other. I don't know.
No, I mean, like, we're not really trying to look at the morality for, like, today, because then everyone's bad. What I'm saying is, for the time, it was bad, but this is what happened. You would buy slaves from other Africans. The Europeans would buy slaves from Africa, right? And they would sell the other Africans they kidnapped. Portugal outright just took some of them. They didn't just buy. Some of the Portuguese literally just stole them, which, like, that's horrible, even for the time. So that's kind of what the difference is. And they did that to try and populate the region because it was very underpopulated. And also just to have more, slaves for slave work, which is really gross and really bad, but remember, historical at the time. Let's continue the video. That's just some of the stuff I was looking at. I believe
All right, let's continue.
the guy who founded Brazil, the first guy to find it, Brazil, his name was, I believe, Pedro Alvares Cabral. He discovered and claimed Portugal in 1500. So his name was Pedro, and he, it was not in Brasilia, it was in, some other city.
Spanish set about
We'll
conquering
look
the New
later.
World, and the Portuguese established a trade empire in the Indian and South Atlantic Oceans. Neither side were aware of the small piece of the American continent, which lay in Portugal's half of the globe.
Alright, we're in Italy.
Before European discovery, South America was inhabited by numerous Native Americans
Yeah, that
who
is
had
true.
migrated from the north either by land or by shallow coastal sailing. We aren't entirely sure. These early migrants lived in harsh conditions in the most diverse
Most of the
bioecosystem in the
good
world.
land was
These
down
native
here, I
groups
believe.
subsisted mostly on agriculture, but there were some hunter-gatherer communities.
This is where
as
the
well.
Amazon is,
And
right
before you
around
ask
here.
in comments,
Yep,
yes,
that's
there were
the
some
Amazon.
cannibals. Most of these tribes lived on the coast and were broadly
Yeah.
categorized into Tupi
So
and
that's the other side of it. I think what some people forget is that these weren't like innocent people. Everyone in history is bad. That's something that we all gotta remember too. Everyone in history is bad. These people, they also kidnapped and enslaved and captured other places. That doesn't justify.
The past was pretty tough. It was
Yeah,
very
that doesn't
tough.
justify what Portugal did, but that is true that some of these tribes they did some of that stuff. Some of them were cannibals, not all of them. Some of them kidnapped other areas and they were imperialists too. History is just evil, But at the time that was normal. Remember that. For them that was a normal thing. So that's the thing we gotta remember. For all these people's times, this is something like the norm, right? We look at it like it's the most evil thing that ever exists, but people did way worse back then. From that time, there was a even worse dark edge, which is insane to think about. That actually does kind of concern me, how some humans have been that evil, where it's worse than slavery, but whatever.
and Tupperware, although the diversity did not make too much of an impression on the Europeans. Here to help me out with early Brazil is Joe from the channel Jabsy.
Upon Vasco da Gama's successful return from rounding the African continent in 1499, the Portuguese decided to begin trade in the Indian Ocean. Pedro Alvares Cabral left the following year for India, Getting blown wildly off course during his southward voyage, he sighted land on the 22nd of April 1500, and a few days later landed at Porto Seguro. They named the locals they met as Indians, just like the inhabitants of the West Indies. But although nearly 95 times its size, Brazil's population was just short of Portugal's at just under 3 million. This land was east of the Tordesillas line, and so was declared for Portugal. The locals traded with the Portuguese for pau-brasil, a wood with a red dye used in Europe.
Yeah,
Until Portugal betrayed them, though.
Was largely inferior to the colonies in Africa and India.
Yeah, until Portugal would kind of, they would betray them, I believe. So they did trade with, at first have good relations, and then Portugal kind of enslaved some of these groups.
However, when the French began importing Brazil wood themselves, Portugal made a more concerted effort to settle in the area. And for the second part of this collaboration, visit my channel at Jabsy with the link on screen or in the description box
Just
below.
to remind you, at 5
Early
minutes
Brazil
of
was
the
divided
video,
into 15 colonies
I'll-
and granted to wealthy
we will
Portuguese
pause
elites.
the video, then
The
I'll
only
see you
successful
on
one,
the
however,
next
was
topic,
Hmm?
okay?
Wait, what?
At 5 minutes of this video, I'll start speaking a bit of fun facts about
All right.
Brazil.
Here, this is the Porto Seguro, the Rio Grande. Yeah, these are like different layers and sections. So I guess like
Yeah,
provinces.
Let me say them to you in Portuguese. So there's Maranhão, Rio Grande, Pernambuco, Todos os Santos.
Yeah, oh, Porto
Iria-
Seguro. I'm pretty sure this means sacred place or something, right? It means like, or like safety place, something like that. They would like go there for safety in the storms. All right.
South in Sench Island, which made a moderate profit buying native slaves. So the failing colonies were returned to the Portuguese crown in 1549 and a governor was appointed. Merchants and missionaries were the first to settle. They built a capital city, Salvador, and began trading in the Todos os Santos Bay, mostly in the new cash crop, sugar. To help
Yeah.
promote the economy, a group called
That's exactly what
Bandeirantes was sent
happened
to
with
explore the
the
land for minerals
islands in
and
the
slaves,
Caribbean.
which increased settlement for the export economy. Slaves became more valuable as natives died from European diseases in large numbers.
Yup,
Missionaries
that's
were
true.
also very active at this time, mostly Catholic Jesuits.
difference
who
between
founded the
Brazil and
city of
America,
Sao
though,
Paulo
was
as a missionary school.
Brazil
just a few
definitely had a
kilometers
longer
inland from
time.
South Vicente.
Pause that part,
Another bay,
pause,
Port
pause,
January,
pause.
was
Sao Paulo is actually a state, but not only that, because Sao Paulo also holds one of the biggest cities from in the world. I don't know what its ranking. I think it's like 5th place. But yeah, Sao Paulo.
does
Not
that
only
look like
that,
school
I
bus?
guess this is another reason why Brazil is such a big, because Sao Paulo is really big. Okay,
Yeah, it's
you can
also
go pause.
old. Like this city is started back in 1500.
Very big.
This is
It's
the
very-
French flag. I don't know why the French are here. Oh, that reminds me of another big thing. The reason why that slavery was way more in Brazil than it was in like America is because in the Americas it was more countries fighting, so they kind of had to be more concerned with the natives. That's why they would have alliances with them, or like do all these other things, and they needed better passaging and better transportation, so they would rely more on the natives, and that's why they teamed up with some of these others to enslave other natives, which is ironic. But that's the thing, Native American groups, like different tribes, didn't like each other. But back to it, Brazil, Portugal was the only one, so there was no competition. Because of that, Brazil the Portuguese can kind of they didn't really need to rely as much with the natives except using them as slaves. And also, since they were very early on using Africa, they would be the one, they can grab way more slaves and bring them to Brazil to populate the region and have more slaves. And so that's why there was more slaves in Brazil than there was in America. However, does that mean, does 5% America, does that mean the slavery was any less bad than in Brazil? I think from one slave to a million, maybe the million might be worse, but slavery is bad overall. We shouldn't be using numbers and making it some kind of competition. This is not competition. Let's remember that, Chico. All slavery is bad, no matter what, and no matter the number. It's always bad, and let's not make it some competition of who was more oppressed or who did worse. That's just kind of...
Yeah. Slavery was not a good thing, especially from Brazil. Now, unpause it.
Yeah.
established as a French colony called Vilcagnon Island before the Portuguese kicked them out and renamed it São Sebastião do Rio de Janeiro. When Portugal got busy
Rio de
during the
Janeiro.
succession
Pause,
crisis in
pause.
Europe, the newly independent Dutch Republic very
One day,
Yeah.
that's how Rio de Janeiro was born. Rio de Janeiro is a very big beach, and it also holds a Jesus Tower for a reason, I guess. That's it. I just wanted to tell you that that's how it was Rio de Janeiro born. A really
briefly
big.
swooped in and took over large parts of
All
the
right.
colony. It didn't last long, but it did inspire them to put more resources into settling Dutch Guiana. The Atlantic slave trade was kicked off by the Portuguese, buying them on the coast of Africa and importing them to Brazil, where they were sold to plantation owners. More than 40% of all African slaves were imported to Brazil. For comparison, just under 5% were imported to the
That's
United
insane
States.
to think about.
We can end it over here.
Brazil grew
Wait,
rapidly during
we're
the
only in
1600s,
like 1500,
creating new
well,
export
1700
markets
now.
for native plants as well as new plantation commodities like tobacco.
Let's just get to
The system was
1800.
held together by the Royal Fifth, when 20% of
So
all
1800,
minerals,
okay.
crops, and other products went directly to the Portuguese crown, accelerating the establishing of public offices like tax collectors, accountants, and governors. When gold was discovered in the 1700s, the slavery economy boomed, and exploration of
Yup,
the
it
interior
grew
was
really
accelerated
much.
to look for new minerals. They opened up new markets to trade with the Spanish Empire and the Rio de la Plata, but when this area became overrun with pirates and smugglers, the Spanish and the Portuguese met to establish a shared border control in 1750. Brazilian culture was becoming increasingly more diverse. Europeans, Indians, and slaves met to form mixed race groups called pardos, such as the mulattos, cafuzos, and mestizos, with countless numbers of Creoles and ethnic identities. Brazil was to become much more important to the Portuguese crown in the 1800s, thanks in large part to Napoleon. When the Iberian Peninsula was invaded and occupied, the royal family legged it to Rio, where they set up the government during the war. After returning to Lisbon, the king's
It's
son,
1800
Prince Regent João,
Oh, yeah,
declared
that's
Brazil
big.
independent and crowned himself emperor. A brief
He-
independence war ensued where the Portuguese found themselves battling
just
not
ditched.
only the Brazilian army, but also thousands of civilian militia. Sounding familiar?
America!
The Empire of
That's
Brazil, however, failed to
All right,
enact the
pause
changes
video.
that the wealthy landowners and the liberal elite
I guess we can start with the facts now, can we?
Let's, yeah, it's 1800, so but let's remember some two major things, though, about what we just went over. One, there was that kind of time of unity, so that was probably one of the Brazil's best moments. I think that was a very historical moment for them, right? When they kind of became independent and decided to stay away from Portugal more and more and more. Did they do some bad? Yes. However, it's still pretty impressive to see that stuff happen. And two, this was kind of like, let's admit, it was kind of funny how I believe it was Prince of Portugal, he just kind of ditched Portugal for Brazil and became the Emperor of Brazil until it became a republic. So, still. Let's finish what he was saying, though. 6 minutes and we'll end it.
elites had
6
overthrown
minutes?
the Portuguese for in the first place, and so the nation was plagued by socialist insurgencies, slave rebellions, and even a republican movement in the Rio Grande do Sul, supported by the Italian nationalist Giuseppe Garibaldi. They spent thousands on wars with the newly independent South American nations as well. Investment in Brazil showed no signs of slowing down. Coffee, which
And
grew
this is
extremely
something I
well
went
in the
over
Brazilian
in my history class. I think we'll end it from there if you like, or
Yeah.
at least take a break. That was the wars of independence, where it would be nationalist movements. And fun fact, did you know South America invented national anthems? This was the wars of independence for Latin America against the Europeans. Well, specifically just Spain and Portugal. But I believe, let me just search up. It was Jose de San Martin and Simon Bolivar. I think specific, yeah, it was a man named Jose. Right, like,
Anyway, continue. Now let's start with the facts.
yeah. We're not going over like a lot of or more recent history.
But yeah, we get to. But I'll explain a bit of what Brazil did in World War II.
Oh wait, let me finish. Jose de San Martin. Jose de
Martin Luther?
San. What?
Nothing.
There, his name was Jose did San Martin, and I believe he was the guy that like did the was it Wars of Independence? Ooh.
Oh, when the World War II started, Portugal needed a bit of troops for the war. So they called out Brazil so that they needed help, and Brazil accepted it. So Brazil started making a military name, I guess you call it, to I think it was called smoking snakes. So the smoking snakes went with the Portugals, and well, I don't know if they won. That's the only part I know. I guess Brazil is a pretty dangerous army, due to the ranks, but I guess it'll be fine. Now, a bit of the food culture. I just know a little bit, but here's the thing. In food culture, there was crops, I guess. The only thing I know about this is that they put hot dogs. No, wait, mayonnaise on hot dogs. I
Mayonnaise on
tried
hot
it. It
dogs.
was kind of gross. I don't really like mayonnaise.
I don't like mayonnaise, but you know they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, Brazil is Brazil. Now I know nothing of the empire of Brazil. I didn't learn that. In
You
my
don't know your own
school.
history. Like at one thing, that's the thing. People don't know their history anymore. Like I don't want to make a rant or anything, but people don't understand their history anymore. They kind of just don't care. Like it's your history, Brazil.
Yeah,
Like
the past is gone. The past is gone. There's nothing to worry about, I guess.
no, but like for you, you should be learning about this stuff about your country's history because like you know you should be seeing Brazil's like this country that you either love or something that you love to want to change because you care about it.
Yeah,
It should be a
I
country
just
like that makes you really, really push to try and make things better, or you know,
so
right? Like,
yeah, I guess that's what I all know about.
yeah,
I should study a bit more.
yeah. You should study your own heritage, your own like background. You know, you should study more about Brazil because like that's your country, whether you like it or not. You know, you could be an American for 50 years, but you're always gonna be from Brazil, right?
Yeah, my mom told me that I was actually part Italian.
And like that's a big thing. The reason why you're Italian, if you would have studied, is that the two biggest groups that came in South America that were European were not actually as much with Spanish and Portugal in the 19th century, but Italians and Germans went to there. Like in Chile, their military uniforms look more German. They wear the Prussian helmet. I have it too. And in Argentina, Bolivia, you know, Paraguay, and Brazil, a lot of these areas, they were filled with ethnic Italians. Now, like, they were being filled up with them. You could even look at a map to see last names, and a lot of them came from Italian last names. So,
are we gonna end this video or?
I mean, let's finish the video. It's like 2 minutes.
Clean climate became the new cash crop, as well as
Alright,
markets
let's
in timber and rubber.
Don't distract
Eventually, the
me.
rate of immigration to Brazil
Oh,
was so
let's-
high that it obviated the need for slaves, and the practice was ended in 1888. The empire came to an end inspired by the ideals of republicanism and the Enlightenment, and soon a military coup placed Deodoro de
Off
Fonseca
by
as the
29
country's
years.
first president,
Do
the
that,
United States of Brazil.
Hey,
Jebsy, whom I collaborated with,
I was kind of right. I said they became like an official republic around like 1889, so I was technically right.
Not
on
continue.
this project, covered over on his channel the Vargas era as well as the military dictatorship that followed, which led
Oh.
Brazil into the 21st century. So check that out when you're done here. Brazil is not a simple nation. It is full of social struggles, an amazing triumph of
That's true,
nationalism,
I know,
a complex political structure, and a nation at the top of the ladder of the world's most popular game, football.
I forgot to say
Your
one thing.
website need not be complicated.
I forgot to say one more
Squarespace
thing.
makes building a
It's
website
football
immensely
is
easy.
Football is the most popular sport in Brazil.
Oh, I don't want to look at this. Let's turn off the remove.
It's very
Stop
popular.
presenting. There we go. So let's go over some stuff we learned. You know, what's like 3 things you learned about Brazil?
Well, here's the thing I learned. One, I learned I learned that slavery was extremely bad. If you
You should have already known, though.
yeah.
So you didn't. That's not something you learned.
What did you learn?
Okay, 3 things I learned in the past day or two studying Brazil. 1, the more context of how Brazil started, kind of like how it became the empire, and then eventually around 1870 to 1889 became a republic. So that's something I learned, and became a kind of a dictatorship, but we'll ignore that part. 2, I learned about how important the Amazon rainforest actually is, seeing how it's 9% of the oxygen. Remember, 9% of all the oxygen supply in the entire world, and it's filled with massive luxuries and resources. So this is not only for just the animals, but humans too. So this is a massive area that needs to be taken very careful, or very good taken care of, and very cautious around. And 3, I learned about the massive amounts of slavery and why it was like that, but not in areas like America.
All
So,
right.
yeah, that's
That's
that.
all.
Are you just gonna say
And
yeah
I
all through 3, 2, or come on, like, fine, name one thing you learned that I didn't say.
Let me think a bit. I do know about Brazil is that Portugal was the founder of Brazil. I thought it was Indians for a minute.
Indians?
But now I thought. But
Alright.
but after I saw this video, I thought it was actually Portugal. So yeah.
Yeah, I also learned that it was Pedro who founded around 1500 in.
Oh yeah, I learned that as well.
Yeah, nah, I'm bad at names, so I need to remember that one. And then also Simon Bolivar, I actually learned him in my AP World History class, so that was cool. And also Jose de Martin, I believe, something like that. They created the Latin Independent Wars, which were, I think, something that needs to be more talked about, and I might talk more about that on my own history channel. Anyways, I think that's it. That's right.
See you guys. Subscribe to Betty and no, subscribe to Skullbuster and to me. Anyway, see you.
Yeah, see ya, and remember, subscribe to Beasty Chicky. Get his sub count up. I'll see you later.
Yeah, let's go.
Goodbye.
Let's go. See you guys.